love that sound. It's satisfying. Hey, everybody. What's up? Welcome back. We finally got both of us back in the same room again.
You stop working so much.
I know. I know. We'll survive, though. We'll survive.
Mm.
We're not going to do a full call follow up or a call review, but we are going to do a call follow up from Michelle's patient. That was the stroke alert that the hospital decided they didn't want to treat as a stroke alert.
It was the 36-year-old postpartum
That one.
lady with altered mental status. So I was able to follow up, and it was like a week later, I think, by the time I was able to get like a true follow up, which, I mean, is fine. It's no hate on the QA team. They have a lot to do. So we got a follow up, and she did have a massive left sided stroke that they were able to catch. Ended up flying her to the like bigger stroke center that was like, an hour away.
No.
And as of me getting the follow up like a week later, she was still in the hospital with aphasia with an NIH score of like 14.
That sucks.
Yeah. I mean, poor girl. Husband was freaking out when I even mentioned it, and I was like, I'm pretty sure that's what this is.
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought it was interesting. And I gave the feedback. I was like, "Hey, just so you know, there might have been a delay in care because they canceled my neuro alert." And so they gave that feedback to the hospital. Well, the hospital wanted to come back and they were like, "We did cancel the stroke alert." I was like,
Yeah, the fuck you did.
"How not? You tried putting her in a hall bed, and I did. Not only did I not see a neurologist, neurosurgeon, pick a word, whoever does it. I didn't see neurology, but I didn't even see a doctor. Like a doctor never got my report at all. I'm like, how was that not
Well, I'm trying to
canceling a
remember.
stroke alert?
I'm trying to remember the sequence of events. Who said that it was canceled?
No one outright said it was canceled.
Because I wonder if the comms person just didn't call it.
Supposedly they did.
Hmm.
Supposedly they did. But I gave them like a 15, 20-minute ETA, and I think we're like 3 over that. I try to like undercut my score so like they have time to get there. And there wasn't even a doctor that met me bedside. They tried to put her in a hall bed with a tech, and I'm like, yeah, that's not gonna
It's
work.
not acceptable.
That's not gonna work. So then they put her in the trauma bay. And the entire time that I was there, including when she went to CT, a doc never came bedside.
Well, and it's funny now that the policy for that facility just changed about strokes, and that now if you bring in a stroke alert, you have to go straight to CT, which is what everybody else around here does. That's not anything unusual, but it's new for them.
Not gonna lie, the fact that I talked to the QA person about it, I was like, hey, this is a problem. And then there was like conflict with the hospital, and they're like, but it was canceled. I find it very ironic that a week later they're like, oh my God, we're changing policy. I'm
Hmm.
not saying it's my fault.
If it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, it's a motherfucking duck.
Yeah. So that's a follow up. I don't know if the patient has been released from like getting the follow up, but she got the treatment. They did find a stroke. So even with your postpartum patients, always assess everything and be very, very suspicious if a patient has recently had surgery.
Yeah. So, kind of what we're wanting to do is it's been a while since we've talked about our
It's a
core
possum.
values. Yes, that's Possum right there, who's showing his butt to everybody. It's been a while since we've gone over the core values, and I know that we harp on this stuff a lot, but we really believe that in order for us to actually see change in EMS, there needs to be a change in how we think. And so reinforcing these things over and over and over again ideally is encouraging the conversation. It's encouraging the thought experiment, if you will, to get people to engage with this stuff and to start wrapping their heads around it and have kind of their own application of it in their spheres and where they are.
Well, so this will be technically the third time we've kind of gone over the core values, but we've had a different angle every time we've talked about it. And we do research and we implement stuff. And today with leadership, we're talking about troubleshooting leadership.
Yeah, and this is honestly probably one of the things that we see comments about the most on the topic of leadership is people dealing with problematic leadership, confrontations with leadership.
What about this? What if that?
Yeah, how do I handle this? And there's not enough time for us to go case by case through every situation.
The problem is you can have general thoughts and ideas and concepts, which there are two very good books out there that everybody should read called Extreme Ownership and Dichotomy of Leadership. we're not like getting money from them for endorsing them. Just they're very good reads.
It's good shit.
But just like with anything in medicine, we can't address every single little problem because ultimately the answer is it depends. It depends on the leader. It depends on the structure of the service. It depends on what kind of person and provider you are. But there's some general like umbrella topics like responsibility, respect, stuff like that we can talk about to apply to pretty much any conversation.
Well, and kind of like I talked about in the last episode on the topic of mental health, a lot of times in EMS we like to think that our problems are unique and that the solutions have to be unique. And the reality is our problems are not unique to us. And there's a lot of other people out there who've already addressed a lot of these problems. And leadership is another one. We like to think that, we're somehow special and we want to claim paramilitary status. Well, okay, if that's the way we're going to go, let's look at how the military handles this stuff. So it's not rocket science. You just have to think outside the box a little bit.
Well, and speaking of, paramilitary, references and everything, the extreme ownership and dichotomy of leadership is, about the Navy SEALs and how they run ops and everything. Well, they literally take this book and apply it to business.
Yeah.
And I think it was in the preface of Extreme Ownership, they literally list that book is very applicable to public service, and they list out EMS and law enforcement and fire, and they list us all out by name. So it's applicable no matter what you're looking at.
Well, and in the way that they lay out the book, I think is very interesting. Both books is, of course, it opens with a story. Everybody loves a good, engaging story, and of their personal experience, and then they kind of analyze, okay, what's the lesson to be learned, and then they bring in like a business application story after, because they run a consulting company, Echelon Front, that does leadership training and consultation for companies all across the world, and
at all levels.
And they'll literally go in and sit with these companies, interviewing people, being part of board meetings, all that, observe and kind of diagnose, hey, here's your problems and here's how you actually need to be working on fixing this. So I wish y'all could hear that. There's a cat going, meow, meow, meow. Like,
hello?
Yeah, we have a talking cat now. Anyway, sorry about that. But so when you're talking about leadership, what are we most often trying to do? We're trying to troubleshoot leadership issues. Just like you're troubleshooting issues with a computer or with a vehicle, you have to troubleshoot these problems with leadership. And there's kind of two sections to this. There's troubleshooting leadership problems when you're the leader, and then when you're trying to troubleshoot leaders. So let's start with the when you're a leader part, because this is where you can lay a good groundwork for what leadership should be, what the norms should be. And that makes dealing with toxic, abusive, negative leaders a little bit easier. So, couple just general thoughts up front. One, you're a leader regardless of your job title or certification. Doesn't matter if you're, a brand new EMT, a seasoned paramedic, a supervisor, whatever.
A driver.
Yeah, you're involved in leadership in some capacity.
Well, and with leadership, I would say that we could slide in the word responsibility. So, like, let's take a driver, for example. Technically, on the leadership, like, medical ladder, they're, the lower rung, the less training, pretty much anybody can walk into that job. Well, your leadership / responsibility is literally the vehicle that you are driving. You need to make sure that it is fucking clean. It's full of gas. Make sure if there's a check engine light, you need to make sure that check gets in, the truck check, make sure the tires are good. Make sure, even if you don't know what the equipment is on the truck, make sure the equipment is there. Literally, that truck is your domain and your responsibility. You are the leader of protecting what goes on in that vehicle. The driving is your responsibility. Literally, driving is your specialty. I should feel more secure with a driver than pretty much anybody else, because that is literally your only responsibility. Not your only responsibility, but
your primary responsibility.
That is your primary responsibility. That is what you are focusing on. You should be excellent at that. And then as you continue getting, if you decide to get your EMT certification, you should be an excellent driver, take care of your equipment. But guess what? As an EMT, you have a responsibility. BLS is your specialty. I think in the original leadership, we kept referring to cardiac arrest, but it is the perfect scenario. But it's the perfect scenario. If I put my EMT on airway, your ass better be keeping track of how you're bagging, that they're getting oxygen. You should be excellent at putting in biads. If you pass off to a firefighter, make sure that they're an EMT. If not, give them instruction. Like, you are the leader of your freaking job. And it comes into play when you're working with higher credentials as well. They give you a task to do. You are the leader of that task, even if that higher certification or, more seasoned, whatever, if they have to step in for anything, it is your responsibility to carry out that task with pure responsibility and focus.
It really comes down to, what is your sphere? What is your sphere of influence? And for most of us, that sphere of influence is limited to, technically the vehicle that we're in and the people involved in any call that we're on at any given time. Now, obviously, you can still be a leader amongst your coworkers. And this I firmly believe, because some of the most amazing leaders I've met in the, 13 years I've been doing this have been people that never had a job title change. They never wore a white shirt or whatever colored shirt supervisors wear where you are. They were the people, boots on the ground, that actually towed the line for the culture of that shift, that vehicle, that agency in some cases. So it's not just don't go down the rabbit hole of, oh, well, I didn't get promoted, so I can't be a leader. No, the fuck you can. You can be a leader too in finding your voice, like what we are doing with this project. We're none of y'all's bosses, but we're attempting to put out there that, hey, we need to raise the standards. So, in a sense, your sphere can go outward a good bit, but you still need to be stepping up and taking advantage of those opportunities in front of you.
Well, and something that you commonly hear that a lot of people will regurgitate in promotion interviews is, leaders are lead by example. Well, a lot of people say, oh yeah, lead by example if I was the leader. No, if all of us were leading by example and doing our job justice, small habits, with one person growing like wildfire. Currently South Carolina is like actively on fire. But flames. Right. But you can't wait until you get a supervisory position to then be like, oh, well, now I'm going to show you how to be a leader. How about you start being a leader on your fucking calls and doing appropriate documentation? And maybe then they'll actually look at you as a serious leader, material. You can't say, oh, I'm going to start with the good habits after I get the position.
Well, there's no secret sauce to being a leader too. Like, it's not like there's some trade secret. It's not like it's the Freemasons where, you don't know the secrets until you're a part of it. Like, it's all out in the open. This is pretty straightforward shit. If you're a parent, if you have been in this job for any length of time, any of this, you are familiar with leadership.
Well, and you'd be surprised, a good bit of it is common sense. Don't be a shitbag. But apparently that's a little difficult.
Yeah. Well, so when we kind of have it broke down into three different, I don't say categories, but like three different aspects of
subtopics.
Well, I'd say there's three different aspects to troubleshooting leadership when you're in charge. One is responsibility, two is flexibility, and three is commitment. And a lot of this is just a repackaging of some things that we've already talked about before, but again, putting this in the light of how are we practically dealing with problems, not just talking about, oh, what the ideal should be. But the biggest thing that you think sounds like common sense, but actually isn't, is taking responsibility for your actions and the actions of your team, which everybody loves when things go right. When you're in the news in a positive light, when you're, you just had this amazing call, this amazing save, everything went great. Like, everybody loves to take responsibility for the team when that shit happens, but not when shit goes sideways. That's where this takes a rub, because yes, every individual person should be taking responsibility for their actions, but if you're in a position of leadership, you need to accept a good bit of responsibility for what happens, good or bad.
Well, and where I'm probably going to keep referencing extreme ownership and dichotomy of leadership,
Go
but
read the fucking books.
well, you need to read the books. But so, for example, with the responsibility, I read extreme ownership and stopped there for a little while. And basically, the theory behind it is you take full responsibility for everything. Full responsibility for your actions and your team. And I took that to the extreme, and where I think we need to put out there that both are important because of different, like they do go together. They elaborate on different topics. So we had referenced an RSI of a brain bleed that had gone south very quickly. And what I struggled with most on that call is the things that went south, I didn't do. Like my part of that call went pretty much flawlessly. It was the other paramedic that, fucked up the equipment, patient wasn't getting oxygen at one point and all the rest of it. But I took that to heart and I was like, well, even though he fucked up, it was my patient. I was the elitist, mine, mine, mine. Well, with dichotomy of leadership, it explains that, like, there's a time and a place. Like, the whole point of the extreme ownership is taking ownership of my actions. And when somebody else fucks up, they need to take responsibility of their own actions, but it's my responsibility as a leader to correct it. And that's what I did on that call. So you still have to take responsibility of the actions. Yes, there was a fuck up, but I did also fix it. You are responsible for setting the tone of your team. So if, for example, I had taken that situation and freaked the fuck out, what is it going to do to the two EMTs that have never seen something like this? What is it going to do? Dude man was already freaking out about the fact that, the tube was ripped apart and all this stuff. So, like, if I had gotten worked up, everything was going to start falling apart at that point. How many times have we heard paramedics and people are like, oh, I like him as a person, but I hate running calls with him because as soon as a bad call comes in, they escalate the energy. That's inappropriate.
Well, and you're responsible for managing all those moving parts and for holding people accountable. Like, you were saying, yes, you accept responsibility ultimately for the call, but part of accepting responsibility for it is saying, hey, is going through, each person, each part of that call, of that response, and doing a clinical assessment of it, but also looking at the behaviors of other people and engaging with them on that and talking through that, because, and this applies to all levels of leadership, especially if you're further up in management, what you're tolerating is what you're basically saying is okay. So if you're not addressing problems at a certain level, then people are going to say, well, they're not addressing it, so it must be okay to do that.
It's just going to perpetuate.
Yes, and that's where you have to be consistent, because just like a parent, your kids will find loopholes. They will find loopholes.
Will they ever?
They will hang on every word you say, and you have to be consistent.
They will take you so literal to the word. Yes, we have experienced this, and you cannot tell.
But where people run into is, well, people don't want to hear that stuff. You have to get down in the weeds with your people. You have to experience their life and demonstrate to them that you relate to them. Because if you just stay up in the ivory tower, if you don't engage with them on their day-to-day life, aka get out and run calls every once in a while, go around and see your people and talk with them. But if you don't do that, then your word means nothing to these people. They don't give a shit what you have to say.
Well, and along with that, don't gaslight your people.
Oh, God.
Don't like fluff them up and, promise them something. So, like, something we've consistently seen is, in an interview, somebody might be asked, what are your plans? I mean, we've seen this with the presidential election too. Like, what are your promises to the people? What are your this, and this? They say all this stuff to sell themselves, and then, instead of coming around and getting to know the people once they have the position, they not necessarily do the bare minimum, but like they don't do what they promised. We've talked about how our favorite services and supervisors and everything get out and run calls. They check in with you. Maybe not necessarily every single shift, but like, their name. They know you. They, can at least recognize you. You're not just a name on a roster. And if you're getting your shit kicked in, upper management, even, a corporate director will get on a truck and go run calls, even if it's a fucking BLS call. They will still go out and take a call so a crew can go pee.
Yeah.
Can do something. So like I've been hearing frequently recently about supervisors refusing to go on calls unless it's a cardiac arrest or a shooting. And I'm like,
Hmm.
you're not that fucking special. Like, why are we not it, and it would be one thing if they weren't running calls because they were actually doing admin stuff, but when you're not doing admin and you're not running calls, what the fuck
Hmm.
are you getting paid for?
Well, and if you're not going out and running regular calls where you utilize your rote skills, what the fuck use are you going to be on a critical call?
Well, you're gonna get rusty.
Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Hmm.
Now, so responsibility is one piece of this. Being flexible as a leader is incredibly important because a lot of people tend to get very rigid in their leadership style. And I know you're probably thinking of the same person I am, but some people especially tend to err in a very autocratic style of leadership.
Hmm.
I think that's a little more old school. That's just kind of an older mentality that maybe in the 80s worked okay. I would say it probably didn't, but I think people just took it because that was more socially accepted and normal back then.
I do think it also depends on situation because, like, sometimes you have time to discuss something, and then other
Yeah.
times it's okay. A decision has to be made. We're doing this, and you just have to pick something to do.
Well, and it depends too on the performance of the individual.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
just like with kids, you have one kid who behaves, is motivated, does everything that's asked of them, doesn't cause trouble, doesn't antagonize. Like, okay, cool. I can have a much looser hand with that child
Hmm.
than the one who is being an absolute terror. Who, okay, maybe I need to be a little autocratic and say, no, you're not doing this. You're going to go here. You're going to sit here. You're going to wait this out until your attitude fucking changes. And okay, cool. That's the way it's got to be. So it's not that you can't be any particular style of leadership. It's just a question of how easily can you flex between them.
I was about to say the best leaders are the ones that change how they do it.
Mm-hmm.
I've had supervisors in the past that are like, oh, I'm so cool, I'm laid back, I don't hover, I don't do this. But then they show up in your calls, they do hover, they don't help you, and then their shift is run like shit. And you're just like, there is such thing as too passive.
They're typically the ones who brag about their shift culture the most.
Yeah, and their skills, and then you never see
Yeah.
them do skills. But with being flexible, it's talked about a lot in dichotomy of leadership that as a leader, like for example, if you're the last one to show up on a critical call, sure, they can use like additional hands, additional, paramedics or whatever. Or if you're on an EMT truck secondary call, you can always utilize more hands and more experienced people. But as a leader, you need to know when to follow.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm the last person on an RSI, a cardiac arrest, a whatever, you shouldn't walk in and be like, "Well, I'm the supervisor and I'm taking over." It's like, no, bro.
Oh fucking shit.
No, like you're last here. You're here to be fucking help or get off my scene. There's a time and a place to just follow.
Well, in that situation, if I call for you and there's been precious few times in my career where I've had to call for help and be like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Very, 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 very few. If I'm calling for help, I literally just need help. I just need your assistance, and I'll give you a full report. I'll tell you everything that's happened, everything we've done, whatever I can reasonably in the moment.
Sometimes I just need hands.
And that's the case. And you should, as a leader, you should come in and be like, hey, what can I do for you?
Mm-hmm.
How can I help you? And if I'm like, bro, I'm fucking drowning, jump in. I need some help.
Mm-hmm.
Cool, we can do that.
Yeah.
Or if it's just, hey, I need this one thing done. I can't do it by myself. Cool. It's not complicated. You don't have to always be the one in charge.
Mm-hmm.
Paramedics, we struggle with this a lot because even when it's not our call, we still like to be in charge.
Honestly,
grow the fuck up.
Honestly, I've gotten comfortable not doing that because if I can back up, play, and not do the chart, I don't want to be in charge. I don't want to be in charge. I'm fine being second on scene. I'll come play.
Listen, if it's going to be a BLS call, I will be your bitch. Like,
Yes.
You need me to get your stretcher? I got you.
Bro,
Hell, even if it's my call, I'll go get the stretcher sometimes. Like, this is good for you. Good practice.
I will be the camel. I will carry all of the bags in the sweaty heat.
But with that, you should need to be transparent with your people.
Mm-hmm.
You need to be honest with them when you have a weakness Not just showing them your strengths, but also showing them, hey, here's where I can learn from you. Here's what I need from you. And praise your people who are doing things better than you. But, we don't like to do that because then that, puts us in a bad light and, oh, we can't do all the things. Like, no, that's not the point of being a leader. The point of being a leader is you manage people effectively.
Yeah, just because you're a leader, it doesn't mean that you're infallible. It doesn't mean that you know everything. If somebody tells you that they fucking know everything and they've experienced everything because of this,
They're
this,
lying.
and this, they're full of shit. They're full of shit. It's so funny. We had a lab day the other day, and I gave my students a scenario of an absolute shit show that I ran at a previous service that I worked at. And the students did exactly what I did, and I had shocked sinus tack at a rate of, I think it was like 180. And it was just kind of one of those things that I was so lost in the weeds with that. Well, later in class, when I gave them feedback, all the rest of it, we talked about it, and some of the students were like, ha ha ha, you shocked sinus tack. And I was like, first of all, everybody makes mistakes.
Mhm.
I own it. Second, if you actually like listen to the progression of stuff, there was a lot of shit going on. There was a lot going on, and my mistake was not taking a full 12 lead. I was just looking at the 3 lead. It looked like SVT. So, I mean, ultimately it was my fault, but it's just, don't let anybody tell you that they've never made a mistake. Leaders even make mistakes. No one is perfect.
Well, and that flows into kind of the third thought in this troubleshooting leadership when you're the leader, and that's commitment.
Mm-hmm.
Where your job is, well, and our job in EMS period is very people centric.
Mm-hmm.
Both focusing on our patients on calls, but also focusing on team members all the rest of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, what's more important is that the patient outcomes are improved by your presence.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are a team leader, this is not about you trying to show how big your dick is. It's you're there to assist that paramedic, that EMT, that crew, whoever, to make sure that the patient has the best care possible, regardless of your fucking ego. Like, we really, I think we've gotten so lost in letting our egos run the show, and to be able to have war stories and talk about all the cool shit that we did.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, we need to get back to a mentality of the mission comes first, not our egos. Our egos come dead fucking last. Leave that shit back at the station. We don't need that out here in the field. You mess something up, cool. Accept responsibility for it. Don't try and cover it up. Don't blame shift on somebody. Accept it and move forward so that the patient has the best chance possible.
Mm-hmm. Take extreme ownership of the situation. I think something that leaders, and there has only been one service that I have experienced this at, but leaders, QA, supervisors, whoever is doing like the call review feedback and everything, give positive fucking feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't want to hear from a QA of, oh, close the chart, or oh, you fucked this up, or oh, we need to have a meeting. Like, yes, that stuff needs to happen, obviously, but we need to normalize like my CVA lady. Well, I guess it's not a good example because I went and talked to them in person. But like, if you have a good catch, if you went above and beyond and appropriately treated a respiratory patient, and you gave them the entire fucking toolbox and you were able to prevent them from needing to be RSI because you treated them by moving quickly but effectively, get good feedback. Hey, great save. Hey, great catch. Hey, the patient's outcome, they didn't get RSI'd at the hospital and they were home 2 days later. Like, we need to normalize, have the commitment to give your team positive feedback, and it's going to be easier to stomach when you have to give the negative feedback.
Well, and that ultimately comes down to building a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have some commitment to having a relationship with people beneath you. I say beneath, very loosely.
Mm-hmm. Lead up, lead down.
Yeah, like you need to, if you're gonna be able to lead effectively and put the mission first and build a team, you got to get to know your people. Not just with getting down in the weeds and running calls with them, but actually engage with them and facilitate feedback from them. Because if you're gonna do that, one, they will feel heard. And I think that's something that we crave more than anything, is to feel like we're heard. We all understand that just because we make a suggestion, that doesn't mean that suggestion is going to be practical or feasible for that particular agency. We all get that.
Mm-hmm.
But we actually want to feel heard and that you actually took what we said seriously, investigated, tried to take some action on it, and whatever the outcome is, whatever the outcome is, cool. So they'll feel heard, but when you get to know your people, you're going to be in tune with what their needs are as well as their strengths and weaknesses so that you can adapt your leadership effectively to give them the best chance at success.
Well, we also need to not take offense because here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say that you're a leader that literally everybody and their mother has a fucking problem with. At some point, you're going to have to look in the mirror and be like, oh my God, if everybody has a problem and there's a problem here and there's,
Maybe I'm the problem.
company-wide issues, maybe you're the fucking problem. And you either need to correct yourself or see yourself out.
Correct yourself before you wreck yourself.
I mean, literally at that point. Well, because, at some point, there are going to be higher ups. Pretty much everybody has a boss in some form or fashion. At some point, the higher ups are going to come in and look at you and be like, you're the fucking problem. This is an absolute shit show. You've gotten the feedback and haven't been able to correct it. So, bye.
Toodles.
Bye-bye.
So we've talked about troubleshooting issues with leadership when you're the leader, taking responsibility, being flexible, demonstrating commitment. Now, let's talk about when you have to troubleshoot the leader. Now, a preface to this is make sure that you're not the problem.
Yeah, literally.
Like if you're the person who literally picks fights over having to do the bare minimum basics of your job, this isn't for you.
You're probably the problem.
You need to go back to the basics and figure out some shit. You're probably the problem. This is not relevant to you. This section, segment, I would say, is relevant to the people that actually give a damn, that actually do their job. No, it doesn't mean you're perfect. It doesn't mean you don't mess up something or forget to check this one thing or what the fuck ever. But you actually give a damn about your job, and you demonstrate that by how you treat your patients, your partners, hospital staff, everybody else. And I think we'll have a little bit more story time in here. This is gonna be a little more fun.
Daniel and I have gotten very good at doing this.
Yeah. So there's three segments to this as well. One, be professional, but don't tolerate disrespect. Play the game better than them. And don't beat a dead horse. So, my favorite one, being a professional, but don't tolerate respect. This is one of those. I'll share a call. This will be fun. So.
I love how he's like.
So this was back. 7 years ago. So I was still a younger.
You're just a baby.
Yes, I was a younger medic. I was working a night shift. It was around like midnight or something. Like we were from an outlying area, but it was an area that had a lot of trucks around it. We were clearing up from the hospital. I don't even remember what our call was, but literally it was us and one other truck in the entire fucking county that were on calls.
That's a big county.
Mind you, this is a county that has, a lot of fucking ambulances.
20...
Back then, I think it was 19 at night.
Okay.
Yeah. I think they've added a few since then, but at night, there were still 19 ambulances. So there were only 2 of us that were involved in calls. And that's not to mention the 5 QRVs we had at the time. So, plenty of coverage. Well, one truck was coming in with a cardiac arrest. And so, especially on my shift, we always tried to look out for each other. Our truck was put together. We had all of our stuff. I had cleared from the hospital. Like I had gone back in service. So we were available for calls. Yeah. It's not even my assistant supervisor. It was that service had different command structures for different shifts. Structures. There we go. So the 24-hour people had their own set of administration. The 12-hour people had their own set of leaders. So I was a 12-hour person. The individual that showed up was a 24-hour assistant supervisor. And, without asking questions, without anything, they just walk in and are like, hey, go ahead, clear up, get out of here. I'm like, we've already cleared up. We're just waiting to help, this unit that comes in. Because normally, you want to have a couple of extra sets of hands at the hospital when you're bringing in a bad cardiac arrest. We didn't have any Lucases at the time, so it was still, still hands on. And she's like, no, you need to go. Get back to your area. I'm like, there's no calls holding. There's no other truck on a call, period. Our area is fine. It's, midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. I said, no, we're going to stay and help out this other crew. And she's like, no, I need you to get out of here. Get back to your area. I was like, okay. Thought to my partner, let's fucking go. And she was just very, very unnecessarily aggressive. And I tried to explain to her, like, hey, we look out for each other on this shift. Like, we try and help each other out. And nope, didn't care. Wanted me gone. So I was like, okay, cool. So there was discussions had, and I sent an email that was rather scathing. And I know that at one point I referred to this individual's robotic disposition.
Oh, I remember this.
But it was all couched in terms of, look, and legitimately so. That particular agency had a lot of feuding between 12-hour and 24-hour shifts. Massive, horrible feuding.
It was like that even when I was there.
Yeah, like it was so bad. Having been a 24-hour person before, I didn't play into that shit. And so I made it very clear in this email. I was like, look, this was absolutely unnecessary. That crew needed extra hands, which we were able to provide, and we were not compromising anything. We were in service. You can go back and listen to the fucking tapes. I was like, this right here is part of what's contributing to our culture problems as an agency and this unnecessary feuding between shifts. This is not okay. This is unacceptable behavior. I wasn't name calling. I mean, yeah, I used robotic as an adjective, but I didn't say, oh, this person's a piece of shit. They're so horrible. They're fucking awful. Like, no, this is a pattern of behavior I've seen with this individual, and it's not playing well for the service. It is not in the best interest of the service for this to continue happening. Well, I was basically told, you're good, bro. Don't worry about it. And that individual, to this day, is still absolutely perfectly nice to me and has left me the fuck alone. No, I don't, work for this individual anymore. But from then on, never had a single fucking problem because there was some ass chewing that happened. But that's where...
That's hilarious because that same individual, when I had a ride time, I was on a double medic truck as a paramedic student. I think it was in Capstone. We went out to, shocker, a cardiac arrest.
No.
And we worked it for like 20 minutes on scene. It was a mega code. Rhythms kept changing. We kept getting raw. So we initiated transport. 20 minutes in, the same supervisor showed up on scene and tried to take over the call. And literally the three of us looked at her like, fuck you. Like, not gonna happen. We're not doing this. I mean, she was downright fucking nasty. And it got to a point where the lead medic on that call, like, he was inflammatory, but with reason, and was like, back the fuck up. You have no fucking clue what we have been doing. You were telling us to do stuff that has already been done like 20 minutes ago. Like, no.
So, well, that reminds me of yet another story from that supervisor.
Oh, no!
So I was with a medic, a brand new baby medic. The confidence of an anteater. Like, just...
Oh.
Yeah. And we were on an MVA. It was not a load and go, like... rolling out hot. It was a bunch of cars, had a fucking fender bender on the interstate in rush hour.
Oh,
booty fucking who.
Yeah.
So we had, a very stable patient, and it was my partner's ride, and I was back there just making sure, hey, she's got everything she needs. We were taking multiple patients. Like, I just want to make sure she had all of her bases covered. Well, this said supervisor comes walking in, starts trying to bark orders. And I'm sitting in the captain's chair, and she's, well, we got to do this, and this, and that. And I was like, okay, you ready to go? And she was like, wait, what? I was like, you're not taking this call? No? Oh, okay, cool. Well, go and hop out. We're leaving now. And it's the look of, it was hilarious. So anyway, the point of that was my wording a little bit inflammatory afterwards? Yes, but I didn't start off with that. Start off with, hey, I'm sticking around. These guys need some help. I'm just going to help them out. We're already available. Everything's fine. We are doing our job is, in essence, what it is. We're available. And
Sorry.
Well, no, I say so not being inflammatory and maintaining a moral high ground with that. It wasn't like I was, trying to sneak off and get, a late dinner or something and I got busted. No, like we're doing a good thing. Why is that a
If
problem?
you're doing something, I know honorable sounds a little cheesy, but like if you were truly doing what is best for your teammates, your crew, your patient, their patient, whatever, maintaining the moral high ground, you're doing what you should. And there have been times, we cuss. Obviously,
No.
we cuss all the fucking time, and like
Every goddamn time.
we have good relationships with our supervisors, and we'll cuss, we'll cut up,
Hmm.
make fun, poke fun, whatever. But like when it comes time to have a genuine, serious conversation about a call, about policy, about this or whatever, we both will tone that down. We'll be professional for the situation, but
Hmm.
as soon as somebody comes at one of us cussing, and same with patients, like we tell patients all the time, like we can joke, we can do whatever, but you're not going to disrespect me. Same with supervisors.
Hmm.
Supervisors, if they immediately come in at me and are cussing and are pissy about something, immediately it's like take a fucking step back. You can come back and talk to me when you can stop being so fucking worked up.
Well, and that just proves the point that you should avoid burning the bridges whenever possible.
Hmm.
Because unless you're going to leave, you're still stuck with these people. And you need to be able to work cohesively with these people. So when you're dealing with issues, that's why I said be professional,
Hmm.
keep it centered on the team. How does this affect the team? How does this affect the agency? How does this affect all the rest of us? Not just my feelings were hurt.
That's my favorite thing to throw into an email.
That said, if it's an issue where you are legitimately dealing with some abuse, some level of abuse from this supervisor, administrator, whatever, knock yourself out.
Hmm.
Burn the fucking bridge. Because that's not acceptable, and we need to be holding people accountable,
Hmm.
regardless of where they are on the chain of command,
Hmm.
that there are certain things that are not okay, and you don't have a carte blanche to do what the fuck ever you want just because you have a title after your name.
Hmm.
Like, not okay. Fuck off. So,
Well,
walk the line.
and here's the thing: it's possible to bring to light issues within leadership, management,
Hmm.
coworkers, etc., without burning a bridge. And if you are able to, bring that to light and
Hmm.
then leave that agency without burning a bridge,
Hmm.
you will be respected for it. First of all, second of all, it's always good in case for some reason you have to go back to that agency.
Hmm.
It's always good to build respect and certain relationships so you can have professional connections all across the upstate.
Yep.
you know,
Yep.
uh, I don't think I've ever left a service that I've burned a bridge. I've never burned a bridge at like a whole ass service.
Well, and when you're in those situations, your instinct should be to attack the behavior, not the person.
Yeah.
Because if you're attacking the person, then it's really on,
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to dig yourself into a hole. So you need to walk that line. Again,
Mm-hmm.
be professional. Keep it about the profession, not about the personal stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, first point, be professional, don't tolerate disrespect. Second point is play the game better than them.
Yeah.
And this is where, and I know this sounds, kind of sketchy or whatever, and I'm sure my bosses hear this, they might be like, "Well, wait a minute, what?" Listen, everybody does it. And this is, and we've talked about this before in the context of power dynamics in general.
Mm-hmm.
Life is a game. Life is a game of power, and you don't get to not play. It's just a matter of, are you actively participating in it, or are you just being a pawn moved around by different people? So, yes, obviously, there's a chain of command. You have to function in that chain of command. You have
Mm-hmm.
to respect that chain of command. Fucking awesome. No one's going to argue with that. But you got to learn how the politics of a place work. You got to understand what motivates people
Mm-hmm.
and what motivates the people above you, as well as the people below you.
Well, and honestly, who controls who?
Yep. Yep. And the chain of command is both a protection and a tool.
Mm-hmm.
You should always use that chain of command to your advantage as well as the advantage of the rest of the agency. And what's beautiful about that is the chain of command, if you use it appropriately, can shine a wonderful light on toxic, abusive, manipulative leadership behavior
Mm-hmm.
and can just bust it wide open for everybody to look at. And you're like, you're literally calling a spade, saying, hey, not cool.
Yeah.
Bosses, what are you going to do about this? Like, Aren't you concerned about how your people are being treated?
Well, and that's my issue with so many closed door conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Like, whether it's amongst a partnership, whether it's an issue with a supervisor, whether a supervisor is disciplining a provider,
Mm-hmm.
you should always have a neutral, at least third party in there to hear said conversation. And if you're having issues, excuse me, sorry, I had an itch. If you're having issues with two primary, like ends of the spectrum leaders. Let's talk about passive leaders, for example. With a passive leader, let's say that you're having trouble with a coworker, EMT, paramedic, just a coworker. You have gone to them, you've brought these things up. It's not just a personality thing, but it is like a detriment to patient care, making my job difficult, actively arguing on scene issue. And you take it to the leader, and the leader's like, cool, I'll take care of it. And then nothing ever fucking happens.
Mm-hmm.
Well, by following chain of command, I have escalated it to the leader, but if nothing is being done and the issue with the coworker and detriment to patient care and the team and everything continues, then it's time to escalate above that. I am a proponent. I am somebody who actively will tell people, if you need to get a hold of somebody and they are known for being passive and not dealing with something until somebody else says something, man, I will email my supervisor, whoever, and man, I will CC everybody under the fucking sun. I will CC. I mean, there came a point with one situation a service I worked at that this partner was literally affecting patient care and putting us in danger on the job, and my supervisor didn't do anything for weeks. So I emailed him a follow up. I emailed the assistant supervisor, the HR lady. I also copied the director and the assistant director. Oh my God, the assistant director called a meeting and my supervisor was brought in. Of course, my supervisor took the defensive route. It was like, well, if you brought this to my attention, I could have done something about it. I'm like,
I
listen,
did.
listen, bitch, I have it on writing that I brought this to you and you did nothing about it. And then, the person got in trouble and blah, blah, blah. But, passive leaders, you have to be very direct with them. And sometimes you have to call them out openly, very publicly with other leadership.
Because you have to, you have their self interest is to stay off the radar.
Yeah.
And so by bringing the radar to them, and again, we're not talking about like, oh, you were inconvenienced because you had to write a call and a supervisor didn't save you from it. Like, fuck off.
No, we're talking about like danger, like issues,
major shit. Now, so that's dealing with passive leaders. Abusive/aggressive. I don't want to use abusive so casually because there are people who are bad leaders that aren't necessarily being abusive.
Mhm.
So that's an important distinction I don't want to lose.
Emotionally dysregulated leaders.
Yes, very immature leaders.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not passive. They're actively propagating problems. Those are people.
They're encouraging clicks.
Yes, those are people you should handle more strategically. And I understand this gets into a little bit of dark psychology, maybe, and this is one of those things where you have to take responsibility for what you're going to do and not do. But with those kinds of people, if you go into an outright confrontation with them, it's not going to go well because they're going to dig in, they're going to come back at you, they're going to retaliate, and it's going to be a fucking mess. So maybe you find some ways to get under their skin a little bit. Maybe, if they're not parking where if they're parking where they shouldn't, you gotta,
take a sign.
Put a sign on their window for everybody to see that they're not supposed to be parking there. I don't know, things like that. But those are things where you're not doing anything wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You're not making, well, you're kind of making a scene, but it can be taken a bunch of different ways. There's a little bit of like, what can you say? They can't argue with it.
Be very careful in your wording, but give them like a sweet email that calls out the fucking issue, especially if policy is being broken.
Yep.
We're very good at our wordy emails.
And again, we're talking about stuff that's a problem. Some people, especially if they make it a pattern, if they're making it a pattern of abusing their authority, they need to be held accountable by the people that are under them. And sorry, sometimes that can be a little petty. And you know what? If you're gonna abuse your authority, be prepared for some wild shit to come back at you. And that's okay. I don't personally see anything wrong with that. Pick your battles, Pick your battles carefully, because there are definitely. What are you doing, you fat bitch?
So that's Stormy, by the way.
Listen, look at this. Look at this fat bitch. Like, she's fucking
Oh,
huge.
stop showing her cooter
Oh,
online.
it's onlycats.com.
Oh, God.
But seriously,
yeah.
like, pick your battles. It's not complicated. Pick your battles. Fight the
Yep.
ones that are worth it.
And escalate appropriately. Just like
When
we
appropriate.
said.
When appropriate.
What did I say?
Well, you just said escalate appropriately. And, tomato, but all I'm saying is, like, there's things that don't need to be escalated.
No.
Period. There's just things that don't need to be. Like, it's not fucking worth it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're going to escalate, if you're going to make it the hill to die on, fucking die on it. Like, go full send.
Please choose something worth dying for.
And because if you pick battles that actually mean something, you're actually going to gain more respect from people.
Mm-hmm.
You are. Because you're demonstrating that, hey, I have enough maturity to realize what's worth making a huge deal out of and what isn't. And a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people don't have that. They're just chronically emotionally dysregulated, and they make it worse at work.
Well, and people will choose something stupid to, be the hill to die on, and there won't be any support behind it. They'll go about it very emotional.
Emotionally.
Very emotionally. Oh, God. Stop.
Verbal stroke.
They'll get very emotional about it. So then when something actually matters, that they decide to die on that hill yet again, most people are going to be like, oh, sweetie, you're just upset. Like, it's fine. And just not take it seriously. Like, I don't know. What's the common one that people like to die on? T-shirts or, tucking stuff in. Just tuck in the fucking shirt. Like,
Run the fucking call.
Like why are we dying on this hill that is literally written in policy, and then you actually have like other policies, procedures, coworker issues, whatever. This is an actual problem, but everybody's just gonna remember that you're the person that refuses to run calls and won't tuck in your shirt and look like a slob. Like, why?
Well, and I guess kind of a secondary thought about the whole, petty stuff. Obviously, you should make the effort to resolve things appropriately, first and foremost.
Mm-hmm.
If the person's obstinate and that's not working, and no one is willing to do anything above, like nobody further up the ladder is willing to do anything, have at it. Like,
oh yeah,
have at it, because at that point you've done your best to do it the right way.
Mm-hmm.
All right, game on. Cool. You want to make this, a problem? Cool, we'll make it a problem. So,
like saying things repeatedly.
But yeah. So again, I'm not, we're not here to be the pontiffs of your life. Obviously use good judgment. Pick your battles wisely. Don't be a shithead.
Mm-hmm.
But learn to play the game.
Mm-hmm.
Because guess what? They're playing it. They're utilizing their power, their authority in a way that is completely inappropriate. So they are out of line to begin with. It's not like they're saintly and then you're coming along like, hey, let's fuck this shit up. Like, there's already an issue.
Mm-hmm.
And if it can't be dealt with the right way, well, you can figure out the rest from there.
Push buttons.
The third and final thought we have about how to troubleshoot your leaders is don't beat a dead horse.
Mm-hmm.
Once you have pushed and gotten resolution to controversy, move on with your life.
Mm-hmm.
Drop it. Like, and if you do talk about it, make sure that when you're talking about it with somebody, you identify that there was resolution and that things are done. That this is a good way to keep from burning bridges. Don't beat the dead horse, because if you keep beating the dead horse, nobody gives a fuck. Nobody's going to want to listen to you.
Well, and so this is something that I've actually seen relatively frequently. Within EMS, but especially at the current or recent places that we've worked, and it's sleeping with coworkers. It's inappropriate. You shouldn't do it all the way around. But something that we have seen is when a supervisor messes up, sleeps with a subordinate, sleeps with, somebody, whether they're married, single, whatever, inappropriate use of power. And obviously people gossip. It comes to light.
Shocker.
Right? People find out, whatever. Whether the supervisor gets fired or not, like, once that controversy is, open, out, everybody knows about it. When new hires are coming in, why are we talking about it? Why
Yeah.
is it as soon as you say the name of said person, I ran a call
Let me
with
tell you about this.
yeah, let me tell you. Like, okay, it's done and over with. Maybe it's a married person that decided to stay with their partner and they're trying to heal from it and like genuinely, turn over a new leaf or whatever. Why are we continuing to bring that up? Because it's going to hurt all parties involved. It doesn't look good, and sure they did something inappropriate, but that doesn't mean that they're a bad, well, leader per se. I guess it kind of does, but
Well, I mean, people mess up, but they accept responsibility for it.
Yeah.
And actually have changed action. That's what fucking matters.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I wasn't even thinking in that kind of context per se, but yes, that's a good point. Like, whether it's personal beef with somebody or a general gossip, if shit's done, shit's done. We have to stop ruminating on all of this shit and wallowing in it and we need to stop positively affirming the toxic as fuck rumor mill.
Well, and if you're not going to tolerate respect or disrespect from a supervisor, you better check yourself and make sure that you are not disrespectful. Don't beat a dead horse spreading gossip if you're a little whore on the side too. Like, if you're going to be talking shit and giving disrespect and everything else, you need to make sure that your nose is clean.
Because it will come out. It will.
Well, and it's like, what is the expression? Pot is calling the kettle black.
Yeah. That was good. That was a lot. So.
Leadership!
Somehow we fit all of that into one episode. I was kind of thinking at first, like, damn, we need to make this a two-parter. But shocker, here we are. We made it.
Honestly, if we had shared more stories, which, gods, we could come up with all of the stories. All of the stories would totally push us further.
Yeah. But you guys get the basic drift. You've heard a lot of our stories, and we'll tell you more as we go. But
Leadership.
Anyway.
Our first 2 episodes of Leadership were awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I re-listened to them recently, and the very first one, Authentic Leadership, yes, the sound was not the greatest because we thought the recording in the library study room was going to be great. It was not. But the content is fucking on fire. Like, if you can just, like, get in the headspace of listening and not, like, paying attention to the quality of the audio, it's fantabulous.
Yeah, I'd have to... Oh, it's going to take too long to pull up. I'll have to go back and look. I think that's still the most listened to episode.
I think it is.
I think we're... Yeah, that's the most listened to episode. So, yeah, go back and have a look at it.
The 4 core values at the very beginning, and then we talked about it, like, mid last year. I can't remember the names of them. We kind of made it, like, we kind of disguised them a little bit, so. But all of them are fucking awesome. Yeah. These are fun to talk about. I love it. And I think it's good. I think it's good for me, too, getting re-grounded in a lot of this stuff, because it's easy to lose sight of a lot of these things. It's easy to get lost in the way things are. And getting frustrated. Yeah, and to lose and to lose a little bit of hope sometimes, but I think going back and getting reinvigorated with a lot of this stuff is really good and healthy for all of us. So, with that said, if you learned something, awesome. Tell your friends about it. If you were offended, good. You probably should be. Don't be a shitbag to your people. And we'll talk to you guys next time. Bye-bye. Bye, Linda.